One of the most surprising things that might shock you is that PlayStation is not like Nintendo. They haven't even qualified to be a wannabe Nintendo. Their game, Astro is very indicative of the holes within their strategy as they've tried to mimic that Nintendo's almost full-scale exclusivity. It's not working. It's not happening. The other competitor, Xbox, is now here and is watching you from a different position, whereby not only are they doing so, the entire market is also watching you from a different position. Seeing the saturation of games in the market, things like, say, already 15,000 video games have been launched on Steam, and even others on other platforms would have increased that same number, as indie developers have access to engines, all kinds of different resources for basically free, and with a little bit of elbow grease, you can get a Power World. It's obvious that a game like Astro would have needed to find more players in the audience to be able to get things done. 1.5 million units sold is, in my opinion, the craziest thing ever. Now, here is another challenge. I see PlayStation fans doing the same thing that they did again with Final Fantasy. Well, 1.5 million copies sold is actually fine. Okay, but PlayStation is pursuing growth, as well as Xbox and Nintendo, in a market that is largely, according to Sean Layden, stagnant. Why would any business in a market that has reached stagnation be sitting there all happy and fat? That is exactly what's going to close up shop. And we saw this with people saying things like, well, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and Intergrade and 7 Remake all sold well as Final Fantasy 16. When these games basically clocked about 3, maybe 4, maybe 5 million copies. I think one of the Rebirth series did 10, and that was all they were able to get. It wasn't until later that the developers themselves came out and said, well, our business was not as profitable as we wanted. I think this is why you're seeing PlayStation take a game like Halo Horizon Adventures even to the Nintendo Switch, but they made a critical error with a game like Astro Now, Astro is a brand PlayStation game. You know what I mean? If they say, okay, maybe we don't want to take it to Nintendo because it carries a certain emblem of the PlayStation brand, which is weird since Aloy is also in that same category, but whatever, they could have brought it to PC where they would have been able to leverage a lot of sales. This is, in my opinion, a huge missed opportunity, and I think they found themselves in a really strange place now. Sure, Astro would have probably made its money, but here's the thing. The kind of growth that they're probably aspiring to is the kind of reality, not growth, reality that Nintendo is sitting on. Shout out to my audience members. I was reading this chart this morning and I said Zelda sold 19 million copies. They jumped on me. Well, again, it's technically true. However, Breath of the Wild sold 31 to 32, probably more, million copies, and Tears of the Kingdom is the one that was coming alongside it. That is a 20x on a Nintendo game compared to Astro PlayStation needs a way to go. If you look on the right side of the chart and you look at, say, some of their heavy sellers in this new generation, you're going to realize that the games that are hitting the 20 million, peak are the games that made their way to PC. Look at it. Horizon Zero Dawn, God of War, Marvel Spider-Man on PS4. That one may have sold by itself native on that. Uncharted, Last of Us, but once the PC side is added, that's where you're seeing the movement. There's no reason why PlayStation should be acting as if the 65 million consoles that they've sold is not high on Call of Duty and can't get off. That's what's going on. So this coming back to come in and say, oh, the sales are enough is, in my opinion, the most asinine thing you can ever say, because in this particular time, growth is what's being pursued. Now, this administration is changing. If many people have been paying attention to how we got here with Microsoft and Xbox, you realize that it is this same administration that's coming in that did the Job Act in 2017, where they allowed for different big companies to bring money from overseas. This is where Microsoft brought in the cash that was sitting in their own account. Analysts detected some money that Microsoft has spent on taxes. That's how they knew Microsoft had brought in some money. It was a little low key, but they were like, it seems like Microsoft must have brought money from, overseas because they've paid a certain amount of money to the IRS as taxes. It was undisclosed. Right after that, guess what Microsoft went and bought? They went shopping and got Bethesda, and then a few years later, they decided they were going to go for Activision Blizzard King. So we know that the economy and gaming is going to see a shift. But I think that shift is going to favor everyone overall, not just Microsoft, because those years did favor every other game developer. And I think because of that favorability, that's why we actually saw, partially, maybe to some extent, an effect in the way games exploded across the board. I mean, everybody take a look at 2016. There were only 4,000 games that came out that year. Take a look at 2020. By the end of that administration, that number had basically almost even doubled. That's crazy. Now take a look at the next 4 years. By this time, there were many shifts within the industry around this time that were benefiting people. There was Game Pass money going. ID at Xbox was a thing. PlayStation was also doing its own indie developer support. EA was doing its own indie developer support. And then across the board, Unity and Unreal Engine were helping developers to actually make and bring games. And this is why the saturation has come. If the economy opens up and becomes more favorable, you're going to see everybody else jump in on this same bandwagon again. And this 15,000 games that we already have in 2024, I fear it's going to be dwarfed. Seeing advancements in AI, seeing advancements in all kinds of interesting technology that can help developers and creators move much faster, PlayStation is really going to need some heavy work because their games are about to face way more market saturation than it already did in the last few years. And if they cannot actually concede and say, okay, people buy PlayStation just because they want to buy a PlayStation console and think that somewhere, somehow, they're going to move the needle as to how consumers behave, or they're going to somewhat change and not buy the live service games and play the live service games that they've been playing, then I think they're going to be in for a world of hurt. But they have the opportunity there. And they also need to realize that they're not Nintendo. Hubris is the biggest thing that's going to destroy a company. In fact, I almost feel for Nintendo because their own hubris and all that they've sown is about to come back for them. With their lawsuit against Pocket Pal, they don't necessarily realize that everyone is watching and the industry is trying to see exactly where the holes are to actually, finagle themselves into that market. The market that appeals to people who like those kinds of games, but on different platforms. And Pocket Pal did a good job with, their game, and they pretty much were able to come close to appeal to a lot of people. It's a very interesting and changing market. And I think right now, everyone who has not adjusted yet is in a world of, pain and interest at the end of the day. But we'll see how it plays out. I'm quite shocked. Astrobot only did 1.5 million units after 2 months. I mean, somebody was telling me and saying, well, that's actually impressive. And I'm like, well, did they not report that Sonic did about 1 million in a day or so? I mean, they were saying, well, it's because it was on other platforms, which kind of makes the point that if you want to sell more, get your game to more people. Talk to me in the comment section. Hopefully we'll talk pretty soon in another one. Thanks for watching. Peace out.